My name is Norm Benning Pierceman. I'm the Director of Membership and Development with Strong Towns. And by way of background, I was a pastor for 10 years, and I work with all of our local conversation leaders and our Strong Towns members across the United States, Canada, and now increasingly in other parts of the world, in order to help them to address what is it that is holding back the types of good change that we want to see in our community. And I want to talk about congestion as one of those major elements here. And so what does it mean for us to embrace congestion? I was just having a conversation with a friend here that was talking about a project that they have had underway for about 10 years and it can't go forward because of the concern about traffic congestion. We see the concerns in so many of our neighborhood streets, particularly our town centers, where the assumption is if someone has to wait longer than 1 or 2 light cycles, that you've basically invoked the articles of war against them. And so one of the challenges that we have is to figure out what do we do about congestion. And at Strong Towns we say the only thing worse than not having having congestion is not having congestion. And it emerges not out of the idea that, there are many reasons why congestion increases safety in a lot of surprising ways. There's a lot of other sort of hidden benefits to more congested places because it brings speeds down. It causes people to have to linger or dwell in a space. And I'm thinking particularly of automobile congestion because it's the most unwieldy. But in this context, we also think we need to talk about having congestion in places and making them more productive. Strong Towns has a lot of allies who are pushing for safe streets, and we have a campaign underway for safe and productive streets. But we find that we're actually quite unique in talking about the productivity of any given street and really insisting that we need safe, absolutely, but also productive streets. And those things are inextricably linked together. And so at Strong Towns we say that streets are a platform for building wealth. And we need that wealth to be stored within a community. We need it much like in the principles of permaculture or regenerative agriculture, much like water needs to be able to slow down and stay for a while. We actually hold that if we can get our streets right, we do the exact same thing with money. We do the exact same thing that actually slows it to a trickle and allows it to infiltrate within communities, typically in smaller wallets, in smaller checkbooks, in smaller organizations, smaller businesses, instead of being whisked away out to the suburbs. In my community, the McDonald's pays 1/7 the amount of property tax per acre that the downtown little coffee shop with a counseling office on the second story does. And I always ask our crowds, how much do we love the culinary delight of the McGriddle that we're willing to subsidize it to such an extent? And so if we build and focus our attention on great streets, one of the things that we need to do is what does a productive street look like? This has parallels with residential neighborhoods as well. We'll talk about that in a moment here. But one of the things that we can see, this was in Kirkland, Washington, took a look at one of their very basic buildings in their downtown, assessed it on a per acre basis at $35.4 million. This is like Urban 3 math that we just do in a spot check sort of way. And the annual contribution to the city was on a per acre basis was $296,000. And in contrast, we looked at the Honda dealership just a little ways further out, that shift in development pattern, that beginning to degrade the experience of the street, which is a choice, which is a design decision, which is something that actually can be altered and changed. That shift resulted in a significant drop from $35.4 million per acre to $6.7 million. And then because I was in Kirkland, Washington, I picked on Costco. And Costco, from $35.4 in their downtown, is down to $2.6 million per acre on a 15-acre site. This was the equivalent of paying $21,000 a year in property taxes on a per acre basis. And the response was, well, we get sales tax from Costco, and people buy big things at Costco. I see what my wife brings home in terms of what goes in the fridge, and we need to buy several extra fridges from Costco in order to fit it all in. Maybe that's the way that the game is played. And the reality is, these smaller businesses in our downtown actually on a sales tax revenue basis outperform often those big box retailers when you even out over the long term how long they last, how long they endure, and the benefit that they bring to the community and all of the other ancillary things that go on. And from this perspective, we're asking, what is the productive value of the streets that this place fronts compared to the ways that we know that we can create our downtowns? And so it's a 14x multiplier. And I ask audiences all over the place, do you want more of this or do you want more of this? Do you want more money in your pockets? Do you want more walkable places? Do you want to actually prioritize those things? And the response is often that, well, we need to basically deal with congestion. But what is it that causes congestion? It's slowing and then stopping. And what is it that creates prosperous places? And I know I'm being very simple here, but I do think that there's a value in just returning ourselves to these principles. What creates prosperous places is slowing to notice something and stopping to engage. This is critical for markets, for restaurants, for churches, for little free libraries, for that child doing their lemonade stand. And so any place that is worth going to is going to have congestion. And I love this line from my brother-in-law, actually. The entire purpose of a city is to create congestion, especially a brothel or a saloon. They need lots of people to notice, and then to stop, and then to engage. Now, ideally, we have many other types of businesses and practices, but the only goal throughout human history in our settlements has been to get people to stop. And so we should frame the discussion, the public discussions that are taking place with so many of our neighbors, sometimes with that financial performance side, sometimes with the, hey, we can have nice things, it'll feel better for you to walk hand in hand with your granddaughter down a street that has been actually made right for you. But the truth is that congestion is the price that we pay to have nice things. Proximity to the things that we want. And I also want to point out that easing congestion increases costs. Certainly from a Strong Towns perspective, we go out all the time saying you can't afford to continue building the way that you are. You can't afford it, you can't build it this way and continue to maintain it. It increases the distance that we routinely decide to drive for basic things. People are remarkably irrational. It's an election year in the United States, and as a Canadian, I'm like, oh man, what's going on? But in that context, people make very rational decisions when it comes to deciding trips, deciding how they're going to navigate to the spaces that they want to go. And if we continue to make the easiest thing, in a sense, the worst thing that is possible, we're going to see more of that. I also say, even things like advertising and PR for your local shopkeeper, they have to compete, big signs, all of that, all of the extra resources, rather than being able to serve their customers. Easing congestion hurts entrepreneurs. The regional employment for regional people creates local scarcity. It's subsidized by subsidizing the edge, creating easy access. We sink our local suppliers and we limit what is possible. And so with that, I'm going to conclude by saying that we need to continue, even as you work on a site-by-site basis or do regional plans or things like this, consider taking up the challenge. What if we had no new roads? What if we ended highway expansion just to say we've overbuilt it and we're at our time? Thank you very much.